Well, Mary, it's another hot day.
Well, who would figure that this time of the year we would be so incredibly dry,
Very.
and after coming off of almost a week of 70s, we're going to be close to 3 digits.
Toasty again, yeah.
It's warm out here, folks.
Yep. So we'll have to replay this like in January and February when people are really cold.
Yep. We'll heat you right up. And don't forget, we're going to give you a little extra dose of humidity along with it.
Yes, there we go.
Not a drop of rain, but lots of humidity.
And this show is the
History Files.
Today is a show that I think everybody's going to enjoy. It's a topic that has a direct impact and a tie-in to Trempealeau County, and maybe to like Mary's ancestors. So,
oh, here we go.
Yeah, but before we start talking about this is going to be a topic that's going to require Mary.
Oh boy.
Here.
Okay, what do we do? Here we go.
To do just a little.
We got to do a little intro.
Here we go.
Okay.
It's going to require her.
Hey, I've been told people like this look. I've been told people like this look. There we go.
Ta-da! So apparently we are going to be talking about the Norwegians and Norway today.
There we go. This looks good on me.
Yeah,
don't you think?
It does.
I have
it's
to do this. See? Oh, yeah. There we go. You know, one day I'm going to make Nancy do stuff like this.
She's going to have me dress up like a leprechaun or something. Uh-oh.
Green dye, folks. Green dye.
So, Mary, have you ever heard of Ole Bull? B-U-L-L, the last name?
No, I have not.
Have you heard of Oleanna?
I have not.
Okay, now I'm going to sing a couple bars. I beg your forgiveness because I am not a singer, but perhaps you've heard this tune, and the chorus goes like this. Ole, ole, Anna, ole, ole, Anna, ole, 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 Anna. Have you ever heard that?
I have never heard that.
Fun song, but it's interesting because Ole Bull, and his last name was like, you know, cattle, B-U-L-L. He was born in 1810 in Norway, and I thought it said like Bergen or someplace, people that keep up with these places in Norway. And by the time he was 4 years old, he was learning by himself how to play the violin.
Oh.
He was just phenomenal. His parents were fairly well off.
Well, for a violin and that time stamp, you know, it's not a cheap commodity.
No, he wasn't living out in some little house raising, you know, goats anywhere. And by the time he was 5, an uncle had given him his own violin, and he was learning to play. By the time he was 8, he was playing in an orchestra.
Talented.
At 8 years old.
Well, remember, no TV, no internet. Right. What are you going to do? You're going to play your violin till it stops squeaking and making those screechy noises.
And by the time he was 11, he was actually conducting the orchestra.
Oh, so he was kind of like a musical savant.
He was a prodigy.
There you go.
Yep. And of course, he just got better as he grew up, and he became a composer.
Okay.
And just a master violinist. They always say that he was one of the best violinists ever. And he was very much a Norwegian nationalist because at this time, Sweden still kind of had control of Norway. And he was he was always promoting the Norwegian language and the Norwegian culture. He was just beloved by Norwegians. And he was quite the showman. I mean, he just didn't stand there and play the violin. I guess he really got into it.
Oh, so he was kind of like a violinist rock star.
He was.
Okay,
he was an
good for him.
Rock star.
Breaking down barriers, laying new ground.
He was a handsome guy, and most of the music he played was that romantic type music that was very popular then. And the people just loved him.
Oh, I bet you he made the ladies swoon.
Oh, I think he did. I'm sure he did.
They would sparkle, I bet, and listen to the violin and how he played it. Oh, how romantic.
And he toured. He loved to tour. So he didn't stay just in Norway. He was all through Europe and the United States. And he married, and he and his wife, Felicity, had 6 children, and 5 of them survived, which was really good for those days. Yeah.
Yeah.
And but unfortunately, in 1862, his wife died.
Okay.
And in 1868, let's get the right year, right?
And we fast forward a century.
Yes. Now this is where the first direct comes in here. Was in 1868. He was touring in Wisconsin.
Oh.
And I think he was either in Eau Claire or Chippewa Falls. And he met this young lady. She was 17 years old. Her name was Sarah Thorpe. Now, where have you heard the name Thorpe in relation?
Oh, there's a little city on Highway 29 called Thorpe.
Well, people up there say you're supposed to say Torp.
Torp? They've got great food at the Torpedo, by the way. That's a little town restaurant. Torpedo.
Yep. And this lady, like I say, she was 17, and Ole was 60 years old.
Oh, okay. So kind of like early spring, late fall kind of a deal.
Right. And Sarah Thorpe's father was very famous in Wisconsin. He had been one of those lumber barons that made a huge amount of money in the lumber business. And he eventually wound up in Madison as a state senator.
Oh, really?
So it was a wealthy family. And Sarah and Ole just really hit it off. And they were eventually married.
Okay.
And like, I think 1870 they were married.
Okay. So there was a little bit of a courtship there. It wasn't a immediate run down the aisle kind of thing.
But there was quite an age difference.
Yeah. That'll be challenging. But again, the times were different.
Yep. And but previous to his first wife dying and then meeting Sarah, Ole was a fantastic violinist, but he wasn't the world's greatest businessman.
Uh-oh, that usually means there's trouble brewing.
So, but it was a great idea. What he wanted to do, and he did it, was he purchased 11,000 acres of land in northwestern Pennsylvania.
Oh.
In what today is called Potts County. And his idea was he was going to establish, it was going to be like 4 little towns or cities on this 11,000 acres. And he was inviting people to come in from Norway and settle there.
Oh, okay.
And it was going to be run like a cooperative.
A little piece of homeland.
Yep, it was going to be run cooperatively, and he had big plans. He started building himself a big house. He called it a castle. I think that's probably a little overreaction. But unfortunately, the 11,000 acres that he paid something like $10,000 for, which was a lot of money back then.
Oh, I bet.
Yes. Turned out to be, it was mountainous and hilly and swampy, and there really wasn't anywhere for people to settle and farm.
Oh, no. So it was a sour land deal.
It was. Just, I mean, nowadays there's a park there, and it's beautiful because it's got the mountains, and Ole Bull's house that he was building, and called it his castle. It was up on a hill. It had this beautiful, panorama in front of it. And most of it's still there. I think part of it burned.
Oh, no.
But most of it's still there. And nowadays it's being used by the Forest Service.
Oh, okay.
So it's still there in part anyway.
Okay.
But these 300 families and people that he brought over there, and they called this colony Oleanna, and I think part of it was named after the Norwegian royalty at that time.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yep. And he had big plans for it, but it just turned out to not be a good deal.
So like an early commune kind of a thing.
Right. Well, that whole idea of cooperatives, that's a...
Was that a Norwegian?
Norwegian, Swedish, Danish, that was...
They like to play nice.
That was the whole idea, working together, for everybody's
Teamwork.
benefit, yeah.
Teamwork, working together.
But
we can learn a lot by that
We
little
can.
set of words.
because we had, cooperative creameries here.
Right, right. Okay, so now we're in Pennsylvania
Yeah.
and we're ready to crash and burn because the project isn't working out the way we had planned. But you said there's 300 families
Yeah.
that were in process of coming over here when all this went kaflooey?
They were over here because they were trying,
Oh boy.
but it just turned out that they couldn't, it didn't work out. The land was totally wrong for what they were planning, with all this agriculture. It wasn't going to work. And so most of them pretty much lost everything. But where did they go? They came west because this was 1852, 1853. That was a time when Wisconsin, it was recently made a state and lands were opening up. And so this is where they came, Wisconsin and Minnesota. Now, I had a late neighbor, and many of you remember Gary Everson.
Yes.
He had told me once that one side of his family had come from Oleanna to Trempealeau County.
Really?
Yes, and I'm not sure if it was on the mother's or the father's side, but here was a direct connection. And then I had seen a little thing in the paper where they run that thing about, 100 years ago,
Yep, yep.
looking back. There was a little blurb there about two local families that were also related to this Ole Bowl project. And there's probably more. Now, maybe there's some people watching this that say, oh, yeah,
Great-great-great-grandpa Ole.
came from Oleanna.
Wow.
Yeah. So it went bust, but in a way it was good because we got some terrific people settling
we
in
did.
this county where it was a little bit easier to make a living.
Or maybe not. There was some pretty suspicious land deals going on
were,
here in Wisconsin as well. Did you know that like Cornell University owned huge tracts of land?
Really?
And they sold it off, and that's how they built their Cornell University empire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a time when, people were trying to get out of Norway because they just couldn't make a living there.
Right.
And I had heard that there were families that only had maybe an acre or two, and they were trying to, keep the family going. And
Gotta have
all
resources.
rock. It was, mountainside. And one lady had talked about how her great-grandfather, they'd put dirt on top of rocks and try to grow potatoes.
Oh. Yeah, that's not going to go very far.
No.
No.
So coming here must have really been like coming to the Garden of Eden anyway.
Well, Wisconsin is the Garden of Eden.
Yes, we've got everything here. And they were a lot more prosperous here than they were at Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Ole was not a good businessman, and he lost a huge amount of money on this deal, of course. But he did have his talents, and he just toured and toured. And then in 1870, he able to marry this Sarah Thorpe, and she had money. But I think the attraction was more than just money.
Oh, did they have a family?
They had a daughter.
Okay.
And Sarah was, if you read about her, she was a very unique lady. She was very bright, and she was into a lot of different things. She wasn't a musician, but she and Ole, in spite of, this big difference in ages, they got along, and they had a very happy marriage. But Ole died in 1882.
Oh, so his daughter was, 10, 11 years old?
She was young, yeah. Plus he had these 5 other children from the first marriage. And but he had kept on apparently touring and composing, right up until the time he was getting tough for him to do it.
Did they know what did he die of?
I don't know. It didn't say. I'd have to research that a little more. But
well, he was no spring chicken.
no, by that time. But they said that, you know, he was always just really noted for being a fantastic violinist and a showman. I guess he was really something to watch.
Do you know, was there any recordings ever made?
I don't think they could back in the...
Yeah, that's too early
Yeah,
in
that
time.
would be too early. And he was a composer, and some of his works are still out there. And it was what they called the Romantic style. And there had been another violinist that was about the same time, an Italian that people maybe have heard of, called Paganini.
Oh, okay.
And like Ole, he was an incredibly gifted violinist and also quite the showman. I mean, he did not just stand there and play the violin. No, he was like all over the stage, and he had this wild hair that he would be whipping around and everything. And maybe Ole did too. But
violinist rock stars of the day.
They were incredibly popular and just made the ladies' hearts flutter, apparently.
Oh, I bet. I bet. That's cool.
And so Sarah, his widow, she was left comfortably, and she got into like yoga and
were they in Wisconsin at this time, or were they still in Pennsylvania?
No, they never lived in Pennsylvania, and I'm thinking they were living in Madison or somewhere else. But they were also, you know, in Norway.
Okay.
Because he was a huge Norwegian patriot, and
he would go back and forth to play, I would assume.
Norway, yes, and he was always promoting Norway. And at that time, Sweden kind of treated Norway as being kind of the, you know, the not so bright cousin, and they were trying to say, no, don't speak Norwegian. It's not really a good language. It's not legitimate.
I want to take over your culture and change what you eat and how you live in your traditions.
Right.
To fit what we want.
Yep.
Wow, that, you know.
Does that sound familiar?
That sounds familiar. I think that's happened a lot in our history.
It has.
Oh, goodness.
But Ole, of course, he was this really strong Norwegian patriot and interesting guy. Well, as I say, after he died, and Sarah, as a widow, a young, good-looking lady and very intelligent, she started getting into the, like, you know, East India type, you know, Hinduism and mysticism. She had a Swami that she really connected with, and she brought him to the United States, and they called it the Vedantic. I'm not probably saying it right, but it's studying of, you know, some Hindu philosophy and things like that. And she brought these other swamis over here as well. She was a very bright lady and very much, you know, a very spiritual person. Well, when she died, her daughter tried to say, you know, that, because Sarah left a lot of money to these swamis.
Okay.
She was trying to say that her mother
was taken advantage of
and was not in her right mind and everything. And so it got to be a messy lawsuit.
There you go. Get your estate plans done. Otherwise, there's going to be a fight.
That's right. But
going to be a fight.
She was a very interesting person. And like I say, she too had this direct correlation to Wisconsin. And Ole, of course, married to her, and these people that had, you know, kind of washed out there in Norway or in Pennsylvania, Oleanna, came here and built new lives. And if somebody watching here knows that they also had relatives in Oleanna, that'd be really interesting.
Yeah, let us know.
Yeah,
definitely.
Yep. And like I say, it was bad for Ole because he lost his money, and his settlers, of course, did not come out financially rich either.
Right.
But they did come to this county and made new lives and were part of the economy here. So
isn't that awesome?
That was a good deal.
That's a nice piece of history, Nancy.
And so I've also had the thought, you know, maybe Mary and I are actually related because I have got that 7% Norwegian ancestry in my DNA.
There we go.
It might have been her ancestor, you know, Ragnar the Rotten.
Ragnar the Rotten.
When he was, you know,
I was
storming.
thinking Bullvide the Conqueror.
Well,
right?
it could be when they were out there, storming around Ireland and spreading out their DNR, their DNA, their DNR, Freudian slip.
Oh,
So who knows? Maybe maybe I'm related to Mary through
you just never know.
through Ragnar or Einar or whoever.
Bullvide.
Yeah.
I like Bullvide. That's
Yeah.
a very, very strong
Well,
Nordic name.
They did, and those Norwegian Vikings, they got around.
By boat.
Yep.
They'll never see us coming.
Nope.
Well, we really hope that you enjoyed this little walk through history. And what a great topic, Nancy.
A really interesting guy, and he really isn't remembered too much anymore, but in his time, it's like everybody knew of him, and especially if you were Norwegian and in Norway, you really knew who Ole Bull was. Very interesting guy.
Check it out, yeah.
If you look on Google, Google Ole Bull, he did still have some music, and I think maybe you could find that on YouTube. Who knows?
Well,
But,
I'm sure, where new artists have done it.
Sure, yeah, interesting guy.
But then you wonder if they had the talent with the strings. Because violins are pretty fussy, Nancy.
And to be able to dance around what apparently was what he did when he was playing, he was really talented though.
How fun. How fun.
Okay, so we're going to say thank you for coming along with us and talking about Ole Bull and Oleanna on the
History Files.
And we're sitting here in the shade today for two reasons. Number one, it's really hot. And number two, if we were going to go somewhere in my car with a dog right now,
it smelled like skunk. Oh, and Nancy negated to tell you about her skydiving accident. She blew out her back.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
we're
it was
trying
skydiving.
to, he's skydiving and, doing that, woo, or
Yeah.
was it parasailing?
Yeah.
One of them things.
Yeah, something like that. No,
Yeah.
actually, I just kind of fell over. Anyway, we'll see you later.